I'm JD Maher. Welcome to Shalom World's 500 YOC program in partnership with the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines. In this series, we dive deep into 500 years of Christianity, its roots, journey, and fruit in the world's third largest Catholic country, the Philippines.
In the 16th century, explorer Ferdinand Magellan and his team of voyagers from Europe reached the island of Cebu to expand their spice trade. This has been marked as a milestone in the history of the country and its people. The Christian missionaries who accompanied Magellan on the Spanish ship spread the gospel in the Philippines.
Through the apostolic exhortation of Pope Francis in Christus Vivi, he addressed the youth and the entire church as he said, Christ is alive and he wants you to be alive. Christ must be considered as the role model, and so all are invited to lead a life in him. Such Catholic heroic lives can be seen in the Church of the Philippines, with the people who lived and died for faith in Christ. Amidst all the suffering, inspiring Filipinos proclaimed that they would happily die for Christ. Do you know about St. Lorenzo Ruiz, St. Pedro Calungsod, Venerable Mother Ignacia del Espiritu Santo? Well, their lives were raised for their goodness and inspiring contributions to the Church. Tonight's episode discusses the life story of Filipino saints, the blessed, the venerables, and servants of God recognized by the Catholic Church. To discuss this topic, we are honored to have Father Emilio Quilatan and Father Mhar Balili.
Archivist, Philippine Augustinian Recollects, Reverend Father Emilio Edgardo Quilatan, OAR, a native of Cavite, studied philosophy at Archivo Recoleto's seminary in Baguio City. Ordained a priest in 1992, he was sent by his superiors to Rome, Italy for further studies at the Pontifical Gregorian University, where he obtained his licentiate and doctorate in church history, both as magna cum laude. A prolific author, Father Emil also contributed articles for two coffee table books, The Colonial Mission Complex, The Augustinian Recollect Churches in the Philippines, and the Augustinian Recollects in the Christianization of Western Pangasinan. He is currently the archive administrator of Archivo Recoleto, a member of the Church Historian Association of the Philippines, a church history professor at the Recoleto School of Theology, San Carlos Graduate School of Theology, and University of Santo Tomas, to name a few. Father Emil is a sought-after speaker at local, national, and international conferences on history. Father Mhar Vincent Balili is a priest from the Archdiocese of Cebu and the current Vice Postulator for the cause of Beatification and Canonization of Servant of God, Archbishop Teofilo Camomot, whose heroic virtues were affirmed by the Theological Commission of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. Father Balili also has a licentiate in Sacred Liturgy and an MA in Pastoral Ministry.
Welcome, both of you, to 500 YOC. We're glad you're with us.
Thank you, JD, for the invitation to share with you about the lives of our Filipino saints and our saintly heroes.
Thank you very much, JD, for welcoming me to your very beautiful Shalom World production.
All right, starting off with you, Father Emil, when we look at stories of martyrdom, they're always inspiring. There's an inspiring story there that lifts us, gives us courage. They've made a great impact on the faithful in leading a committed life. And as of course, you both know, and you know, Father, the first Filipino saint to be canonized was Lorenzo Ruiz. He was a married layman, a member of the Rosary Confraternity. His martyrdom was, we can say, the beginning of the journeys of many more Catholic heroes and saints from the Philippines. Now, with that in mind, I want you to start off, share with us the circumstances that led to his martyrdom and the impact of his faith to the countrymen.
The life of Saint Lorenzo Ruiz no, we could say that he was an accidental martyr. He left Manila in order to escape, no, we might say, accusation that was falsely leveled against him. So when he was accused of murder, falsely accused, so he took sanctuary in Santo Domingo Church, and he notified his family, no, he to telling them that leave Manila and we will meet in Macau, China, where they will be reunited. So the Dominicans, no, had plans to go to Nagasaki, Japan. And at that time, Japan was closed to missionaries because there was, since 1595, there were persecutions raging, no, against the Catholic Christians. He went along with them, hoping from Japan he could leave for Macau, China, where he could be reunited with his family. But when they were preaching the gospel among the Japanese, no, they were caught. That was 1637. They were caught, and Lorenzo Ruiz among them. And when they were interrogated, they underwent torture. Lorenzo Ruiz was wavering. He was worried about his family, and he was about to deny his faith. But one of the priests encouraged him and gave him the strength to proclaim his faith for Christ. And with that, he changed his mind. So as a human being, he wavered because he was worried about his family. But thanks to a Dominican priest who was with him, he got the courage to stand up for his faith. And when the interrogator went back and said, "Are you going to renounce your faith?" And he said, "If I have 1,000 lives, that God has given me, I will not renounce the Lord. I will give my life for Jesus." So with that statement, he declared himself that he is a Christian. And with that, he signed his death warrant. So with that, with the other Dominicans, they underwent the torture called shurushi, meaning to say they were hung upside down with their heads, under the pit covered with wood. But before they were hung upside, they slashed their foreheads so blood can drip outside of the body slowly suffocating them. So that was the kind of torture they endured for days in the gallows, in the pit, the shurushi. That's the Japanese torture, in order, because the torture meant slow death. It was a psychological warning to Catholic Japanese. If you will not renounce your faith, this would happen to you. So it's a propaganda to discourage, accepting Christianity in Japan. So with that, he died. He died in the gallows, and all of the ashes of the martyrs thrown to the sea. So we have no relics of our martyrs, but the records of their interrogation in Nagasaki are preserved. And the postulator of we might say, of San Lorenzo Ruiz and companion martyrs was a Dominican. He died recently, Father Fidel Villaruel OP. And he was the one who prepared the documentation of the martyrs, the Dominican martyrs of Japan, including Lorenzo Ruiz.
I want to bring in Father Maher now. Father, give us a little Catechism 101 here. You're the vice postulator of the cause for beatification and canonization. Give us a little background here. Tell us about the different categories or levels prior to canonization and what the criteria for each category would be.
Not all people know about the background, how one could become a saint. Actually, there are levels of, before we go to canonization. It is called the diocesan stage and also the so-called Roman stage. When you talk about diocesan stage, it is the beginning of the canonization process, wherein the local ordinary, or shall I say the bishop, where the candidate dies, would ask Rome to open the said canonization process. When Rome gives the affirmative response that they could start the canonization process, then the candidate is given the title Servant of God. The title Servant of God means that the canonization process of the candidate has begun. During the so-called diocesan stage, the bishop would create 3 committees. The first committee is the so-called tribunal. The tribunal is a group of priests that would make a interview of the living witnesses, and they would talk about the living witnesses, and they would share their personal stories of the candidate. The second committee is the so-called theological committee. The theological committee would try to assess all the written documents made by the candidates, whether the written documents are according to the teachings of the Catholic Church. And the third committee is known as the Historical Committee. The Historical Committee is a group of historians that would gather all the written documents of the candidate, perhaps the circular letter, the biographies, or maybe some sermons made by the candidate. All the, shall I say, what has been done by the three committees will be submitted to the Congregation of the Causes of Saints. And such congregation will give the approval whether the work of the three committees are already sufficient. If the work of the three committees are already sufficient, then the process would move to the second stage, known as the Roman stage. In the Roman stage, we will make the so-called positio. The positio, or the position paper. In layman's term, we call that as thesis. So the positio, or the thesis, has 4 chapters. The first chapter is known as the synthesis and the analysis of the questions given and answers given by the living witnesses. The second chapter is the analysis of the written documents of the candidate. And the third is the official biography of the candidate. And fourth is the synthesis of the first, second, and the third chapter that would somehow prove that the candidate lived a heroic virtues. So this is the composition, the so-called positio, or in layman's term, the thesis. Then, just like any other thesis, if we go to school, we have to defend the thesis. First, we have to defend the thesis in front of the theologians, and that would be in Rome under the Congregation of Causes of Saints. If the theologians would approve the thesis, then we will move to the next stage and we will defend in front of the cardinals. If the cardinals would give an affirmative vote, they will recommend to the Pope that the candidate would be declared as venerable. The Pope would declare the candidate as venerable, and that means that the Pope, that the candidate lived a life of heroic virtues. So we have the servant of God, followed by venerable. After being declared as venerable, we move to the next stage, known as blessed. To become blessed, we need one miracle. Then another miracle for him to be declared as saint. So that is the whole process of canonization, JD.
Are you looking for life-changing entertainment? Does what you see on most channels leave you feeling unfulfilled? Well, look no further. Shalom World TV brings the peace and joy of Jesus Christ to you, whether at home or on the go. To start watching, you don't need antennas, cable connections, or a dish. You probably already have what you need if you have a smart TV, such as a Samsung, LG, or Panasonic, or if you have one with an Android, Opera, or Roku TV operating system. These can be found on the latest models of Sony, Toshiba, Vizio, Philips, RCA, Sharp Aquos, TCL, Insignia, Element, Hitachi, Vestal, Skyworth, Changhong, Konka, and Hisense. You can also watch Shalom TV on most IPTV streaming devices, starting with the 4th generation of Apple TV and Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Mi Box, Amino, Humax, or on TiVo Box through the Opera TV store. Are you a gamer or virtual reality enthusiast? We've got you covered. Shalom World is on Xbox One, Razer Forge, Nvidia Shield, and HoloLens. To start watching, all you have to do is go to the App Store, download Shalom World, and start being fulfilled by content that brings you into a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ. For more information on how to watch Shalom World on your TVs and devices, visit us at shalomworld.org/connectedtv. Have a smartphone or tablet? Take Shalom with you wherever you go. Again, by downloading Shalom World from the App Store. If you prefer to watch from your Mac or PC, get the Shalom World desktop app. Or you can always watch from our website, shalomworld.org. And guess what? Shalom World is absolutely free on all of these platforms. Yes, free. There are no download charges and no in-store app purchases required, ever. If you're looking for life-changing entertainment, you found it. It's here, waiting for you on your Shalom World.
Father Emil, let's move on to Pedro Calunzad. And he was another hero who is an inspiration to the Filipino people, I'm sure. Let's hear a little bit more about his courage and his commitment.
Pedro Calungsod was a jack of all trades as a servant of the Jesuit missionaries, or lay helper. So there was an occasion that the chief of one of the islands called Chief Matapang refused to accept the missionaries, because one of the, we might say, Chinese sailors was spreading, we might say, negative, anti-Catholic views, in among the Chamorros. So the natives of Guam were called Chamorros, and they will tell you that once your child would be baptized, they would die because the water is poison. So that was the black rumor or the black propaganda being served by that Chinese sailor who was anti-Catholic. And Matapang, the chief, refused to receive the missionaries and prohibited Father Diego, to baptize his people. But remember, there were already early missionaries, Jesuits, who were there, but they were able to convert few. And one of the few converts was the wife of Chief Matapang, who was a Catholic. So when Matapang went away, the mother, who is Catholic, asked the mission to baptize their daughters. So with the consent of the mother, the daughters were baptized Catholics. And when Matapang came back, discovered that his children were baptized, he was infuriated. So he called another Chamorro who was also against the missionaries, and they tried to kill the missionaries when they were leaving. According to the account, they were speared to death. And in the case of Father Diego, he received several thrusts from the spears, and the servant, Pedro Calungsod, was trying to shield and protect the missionaries. That's why he was also killed when he was speared to death. And their remains were thrown into the sea by these two Chamorros, Chief Matapang and the other one who assisted him in killing the missionaries. So again, a lay helper defending the life of his priest, against we might say, the spears being thrown at them. So they were ambushed, actually.
Okay, Father Emil, I wanted to talk about the youth now with this background that you've been giving us about this historical record of these amazing saints. What does it say to our young people of our current generation?
Among the young today, we challenge them to be faithful, especially the fourth commandment. That's the basic. The basic expression of sanctity for the young today is to be faithful to your family, faithful to your parents. It is what we say, sanctity is in all stages of life, because every stage has its own challenges, the way we purify us in order for that sanctity to be shared with others. That's why all the trials of life here, like the saints, the martyrs, the white martyrs and the red martyrs, are telling us, in any way we do, the question will always remain, do we really love God in the way we should live our faith? And that is fidelity.
Excellent reminders, Father Emil. Father Maher, for you, Here's another question for you that I've always been curious about. Most of the canonizations that I've seen growing up in my life, I've always watched on television, and they always occur at St. Peter's Square in Rome. Do all canonizations happen there, or do they happen in other places throughout the world?
The first criterion, JD, is that it is only Rome that could determine, especially the Pope, where he wants the proclamation or the declaration of the saint to take place. No? So in many instances, for example, if the person is being declared as blessed, it takes place in the place where the saint or the martyr died. But most often than not, during the declaration of the sainthood, it is done in Rome. But in the end, it is the Holy Father who decides where the declaration would take place.
So we know that there are saints walking among us right now. We all aspire to this, but there are some in this era who are living heroic lives. So now bring us to the present. Are there a few that you can talk about, these men, these women who have dedicated their lives to the service of the Church of God's people?
Since the pandemic, many Filipino Christians, Catholics and Protestants, became frontliners, health workers. They are doing their best to alleviate the sufferings of the people, and even if they got the virus. These are, we might say, uncanonized saints. They are living saints. All of us are living saints, because once you live the commandments, the love of God and neighbor, I will not be able to mention names, but the frontliners during this pandemic are so many. Even in a small sector of a city which we call today called barangay, they began opening up pantries, for food. They shared their food with others, those who had none. The frontliners, the health workers, nurses, and even students of medicine volunteered to help those afflicted with the virus. So these are concrete examples of saints working in their own ways of loving God in their neighbor. And that's the thing that we should do as saints. Love God by loving your neighbor, and you could find the meaning of your existence here on earth.
I appreciate you saying that, and especially mentioning the nurses. Father Maher, you're the vice postulator for the cause of sainthood of Bishop Kamomot. I want you to talk to us a little bit about his legacy and his life, and where are we right now in his canonization process?
One of the things which somehow interests us of his life is that the moment when he became a priest and later on became a bishop, is that his life was very consistent in helping the poor. One of the famous anecdotes of Archbishop Kamomot when he was still a priest, wherein many beggars would go to him in order to ask for money, to ask for food. And most often than not, he would give everything. He would give up his food. He would give up all his belongings, to the extent that he even gave his ring as a bishop, and he even gave his pectoral cross as a bishop. So Archbishop Kamomot was a very generous person, and even to the point of giving up everything. And part of his life is his so-called phenomenal experiences. Phenomenal experiences such as walk on water. So we have testimonies, and even there are still living witnesses who talk about Archbishop Kamomot walking on water. So to put it in a nutshell, Archbishop Kamomot is a man of consistency, a man of prayer, and a man of generosity. So that's one of the main reasons why we are pushing him to become a saint someday. Regarding the canonization of process of Archbishop Kamomot, I made mention that there are two stages. You have the diocesan stage and the Roman stage, and we are done with that. Now we're preparing ourselves for the defense for the cardinals anytime soon.
Father Emil, let's look at the influence of these Filipino saints and the Catholic heroes you mentioned, the influence that they presented to the Filipino nation in terms of their commitment and their uncompromising faith. What would you kind of surmise on that? How would you bring that to a closure?
Actually, there is no closure, but it's a challenge, an open challenge to all. They were persecuted in their own time. They had their own, we might say, challenges in their own time. But the challenges that we are facing today is almost surmountable in comparison, no, during their time. So I would like to say a challenge to all. Remember, first, being a Christian, you have no retirement age. You are Christian until death do us part. And by Christian, we will be judged according to love. How did we love? That's the thing that we have. Christian is love. Christianity is all about love, the love of God and the love of neighbor. The message has not changed. And how do we take it today, especially among the young and among our generation who are more selfish? And secondly, as a Christian, we are being challenged to get out of our comfort zones. Because the more we hide in our comfort zones, we become more indifferent or complacent. We don't care about the neighbor. It is not God's fault. It's our fault. It's our decision. Don't blame God. We have to blame ourselves because we are the ones opening and closing our hearts to the grace that the Lord is offering us. The Filipino saints and all the saints who are canonized and still preparing for formal canonization are giving us the message. Open your hearts to God's grace and allow things that God is intending you to be His instrument of love for others.
Bringing this together with the 500 years of Christianity in the country, and you've talked about the character and the devotion of the Filipino people. So lastly, I would just say, how do they serve these saints as inspirations for living out the faith in terms of now social and cultural transformation among the Filipinos? How would you say that as we wrap up?
Well, it begins with prayer. And through prayer, we can transform ourselves and society before us. Remember, the saints are men and women of prayer. And prayer is the soul of the apostolate. So I would wrap up, we begin responding to God's grace by opening up hearts through prayer. And that prayer will be the one to guide us in our actions every day, as the saints do. They were men and women of prayer, and they ended up praying to God when they were dying.
Father Maher, I offer you the same question that I offered to Father Emil there, talking about the lives of these heroic Filipino saints, how they lived out their faith in terms of social and cultural transformation that the Filipino people can use in their own lives.
One of the common denominators of these Filipino candidates is that about the relationship with God. It is a relationship wherein they try to put into practice their belief, their faith in God. In other words, yes, they believe in God, but they see God in other people. And that moves them to do good works in order to help other people, because every time they do good works to other people, they see God in them.
Well, I have to tell you, we have certainly learned a lot about the life stories of Filipino saints, the blesseds, the venerables, the servants of God, those people who lived and died in the Philippines, of course, recognized by the Catholic Church. Special thank you once again to Father Emilio Quilatan and Father Mhar Balili.
Thank you, JD, and thank you all for allowing me to share with you my reflections and studies about our Filipino heroes, the Filipino saints.
Thank you very much, JD. It has been very worthwhile being a guest in your show. And also thank you for our viewers. God bless.
Join us again next week for more of the 500 YOC. Remember to download the free Shalom World app to watch the series. You'll get more updates on 500 years of celebrations in the Philippines and many more amazing shows. I'm JD Maher. Mabuhay and Shalom.
We are blessed. We are loved. We are called. We are sent. We will teach. We will serve. We are Christ. We are sent.
Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.